to my another video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about one of the three opportunities that you have when you're trying to decide on whether you want to go to school or you want to teach yourself or you want to go to like a coding boot camp. So let me just basically talk to you about this real quick, is that this is about learning as a habit that you always do. And in this channel, I'm trying to find a way to help address what I believe, the way I see it, on what people should actually do when they're looking to change something about themselves. And one of the things I like to think about is that when I went to college, I kind of felt like everything I learned in school was going to be the only thing I was going to have to learn, and I didn't have to learn anything else. And that constantly has kept changing. I mean, I went to school. I went to for a 4-year college and graduated, and then I noticed that my skill set needed to be upgraded, and I was like looking to just go to school for maybe just my bachelor's degree. But then I decided that going to school wasn't the only thing that I needed to do. Was actually about understanding what the changes in the world. So that brings us back to what I'm talking about right now, which is learning which road is for you. So let's talk about going to school for programming, because that's kind of like where I kind of like was going to school for. Programming and understanding like coding, and you're looking to be like a software developer, web application developer, you need to have like a basic fundamentals of computer science. And that's why I went back to school, because my first year I was just doing like web development, IT, business, graphic design. The school tried to play accustomed to everybody, and they didn't necessarily want to, maybe, I really don't know why they actually didn't do the computer science in the classes, but they didn't. So going back to school just the second time, I enrolled in computer science courses, and I took classes that were pertaining to me. And going to school, focusing on school, I think you should focus on what you actually want to do, because learning how to learn is, I think, a prerequisite before school. I think because if you don't know how to learn something, then every single time you have to learn something too, that becomes challenging, and then you usually become trapped, and then you become an employee. And you don't really want to become an employee, meaning that you don't want to have to spend all of your choices and everything you have to make goes through your employee. You want a day off, you have to apply for you want a job, you have to apply, for the job and get accepted. You want more hours, you have to, apply and get accepted. You want more money, you have to apply and get accepted. Learning how to learn allows you to look at the world in a way that shows what you can and cannot do. I'll explain. You need, based off of Ray Dalio's Principles book, he said that you have to learn what your strengths and weaknesses are, meaning that you have to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at. And once you understand those two, you usually can look at this by understanding on what you love to do and what you don't like to do. And you keep shuffling those pieces into two different groups. And then you focus only on what you actually love to do. But when it comes down to learning something, even when you don't want to learn it, you have to also know what you need help with, and based on the things you don't like to do, and how to get help doing that. So going to college, I definitely recommend everybody who can to go. That doesn't mean you have to actually finish. I'll take that in another video. But actually going to school and finding the help that you need to get the work done is very crucial. When I went to school for the first time, I kind of just stuck in line, did the work, went home, went to school, went to work. I took classes. I didn't really do any big like clubs. I didn't join those things. A lot of those things wasn't provided. I did take classes during the summer. I actually had very few friends. I was actually going to school with the girlfriend at the time. So when we went to school, we kind of like took the same classes, worked together on projects together, and I finished and graduated. And I tried to look for work in my skill set and noticed that there wasn't that many in the era I was actually at. I actually became a victim. Well, I don't say victim. I actually became I became a I don't know how to basically say it. Basically, I had to I didn't have a choice. I had to basically just work with what was available, which was working in IT, help test support, which I tried to work in too. I tried to adapt and work on within that. But my idea was to be like web development. I wanted to work in like developing applications or working in, at the time there was a big field in what do you call it again, like Flash development, so we had websites that people were making Flash games and movies but the information wasn't easily accessible, so you had to spend a lot of time looking for the information yourself. And people around me and the people I talked to didn't really have a good way of like finding out all the information you needed. So after trying out working in help desk support and then working with people with mental disabilities, I decided to get a full-time civil service job working with people in the mental health field, and then went back to school. Initially it was actually just nursing. I was going to go to school for nursing because that kind of felt stable. But I was kept moving back towards programming, and programming was something that I was a little bit afraid of because it always seemed to be very cryptic and syntactically difficult, because I felt you had to understand all of the syntax before you can actually code, and that's not what it was. And I realized this after I decided to, what we say, I had like an aha or an epiphany moment when I decided to learn Japanese. And learning Japanese required me to do a lot of the learning methods that were required in learning programming. I had to become accustomed with grammar. I had to become accustomed with learning certain words. I had to know what they call in Japanese, I guess, it's sugi no henji, or sugi ni henji, which basically means like the immediate response to some things. And once I figured out those little pieces, not entirely each one, but knew enough to put pieces together, I was able to make sentences. I was able to make sense to people, and being able to make sense to people is like getting a like on Facebook that allowed me to become more confident and continue to going. So that's where you need to start doing when you start learning things new. You need to be able to make quick connections with things and quickly get a response from somebody, something, a like somehow, and then going back. And if you don't get a like immediately, you need to continue to break your information down into smaller pieces until you can actually get a like somewhere. So saying, oh, that is great, or that's correct, or oh, I like that, And sometimes you can do that by creating what we'll call in another video called just-in-time content or ahead-of-time content. And those concepts are something that's used all over the internet. Meaning that when you're looking for information online, if you're, I right now, for instance, I wanted to go ahead and start planting, I wanted to start growing, plants, in the house, and I had no idea at all on how to do that. So I, of course, by me, before I went online looking for internet, I just, went to the store and bought some dirt and got a plant pot and just planted some jalapeno peppers seeds inside the pot. And after 2 weeks of me watering a little bit, noticed that didn't work. And I decided to go online and look up like growing your own plants, in your house. And I noticed that there was a website, a YouTube result that actually said, hey, go ahead and post, try out using onions or try using tomatoes. And they showed, I think it was 5-minute crafts. And on 5 minutes crafts, they went ahead and they said that if you go ahead and you first place the onion in water, just a little bit, that over like 3 or 4 days, you will have something that's called germination. And germination will prepare pretty much the plant to be planted, the onion to be planted into the ground, and you will see results. So I didn't use the jalapeno peppers. I went and cut off an onion at both sides, and I placed it in water for about 2 or 3 days. Then I basically took those pieces and planted them into the ground, into the dirt, about maybe an inch or two in the ground, and I just watered them every day. And so, you know, sooner or later, it just started growing. You could see the growing of the little stems, and that was great. It's like, oh my God, I did this. So now I understand what germination means. I used the information from just-in-time information to find out what I needed, and I was able to grow something. And now that information I could take and I can put on top of that. So if you're looking to program, or you're looking to learn a new language, or you're looking to do anything that's new, you need to figure out how to build off of small victories. And I talk about this a lot on my blog and on my podcast on learning new things, because I feel like that's going to be the most important thing going on right now. And in software development, there's a lot of different things going on called component-driven development. And you have what we call microservices, where we're literally doing the same thing. We're taking our big monolithic applications and we're breaking them down into smaller pieces, where they each service does a single thing and does a single thing well, and then it basically communicates. You connect all these things into like a small network, and you can handle larger tasks in smaller pieces. This way, if something breaks, it only breaks that particular service. It doesn't break the entire application. When we have in web application development, the framework I use for work is called Angular. And Angular is a framework for building web applications. We use TypeScript, which is JavaScript, but it's a superset of JavaScript. Not to get too complicated into it, you start at the top and you create using a language that is written, that's understood by the compiler for TypeScript compiler, and then it compiles it down into JavaScript. And this way of writing things allows us to do things that we can't do yet in JavaScript right now for the web. The JavaScript tends to be a little bit messy, you know, and because we can write out our code structure better, then we can actually we can have the humans learn how to keep things strict. We can have the humans learn things and work on things in one way, and then on the bottom, you don't have to worry too much about what actually happens there, because the results that you get from the way you write your code in TypeScript will always be the same in JavaScript, and then the browser or your computer can always understand those things. So since we have this hierarchy, we can use something called components, which are like pieces of a puzzle that we utilize to create an application. And because of this structure, using components, which is just a class, and you basically create like your form for that you use to type in your Google account could be in a component, which consists of pieces of a HTML element and a JavaScript, function that basically takes in that text and then sends it off someplace else. It can be broken down into these little small pieces. These pieces being built like this is almost like Lego blocks that could be built on top of each other, and allows for work to be done in a much more component-driven environment. And if you're looking to learn anything new, you don't have to focus on the entire way Google works. You could just focus on how Forms works and how to basically take in information and how to send information someplace, And that's enough for this talk, which is basically about learning on whether you should go to college or not. I know I went into a big, so it took you on a journey there, but going to school, you have to understand that. Then you can make a decision on whether or not you're going to go to school or not. I think going to school is more about understanding how you learn. Are you a textbook person? If you like self-taught, I feel like I'm more self-taught when it comes down to actually learning something, and then I like to go to school to kind of figure to challenge what I already learned, and then when I'm done with school, then I would do something like a boot camp or some sort of like certification of some sort to hone in on everything I've learned. I don't think one actually works for the other. I mean, some people could do it, but I really feel that having the whole piece is great, because you kind of need to go to school in order to look for work, because most people go to school, especially when you have advanced degrees, they want to make sure that you went to school like them. And coding boot camps are kind of new, and you kind of need to be self-guided, and being self-guided is only possible if you know how to learn. It all comes together. So if you want to look about it, the way we learn today is that going to school or self-taught or coding boot camps are all components to a larger puzzle in our economy, and these things all need to work together. So that's going to be it for this talk. I will make another talk where I'll talk about maybe going into the self-taught route, and the pieces I made today will probably fit into that. So thanks for that. Ja.